Hey fellow patriots, I'm Bree.
And I'm Blaze. Some call me Pa. It has been said that we have 4 boxes to keep ourselves free. These are the soapbox, the ballot box, the jury box, and the ammo box.
And we are the 4th box. We are here to arm you with enough information, resources, and skills to take back your freedom, increase your self-sufficiency, and inspire you to join in the fight against tyranny.
Thomas Jefferson said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Thank you for joining us and for joining in this fight.
Welcome back to the 4th box. Welcome back to the 4th box, ladies and gentlemen. We are slowly creeping up on our 100th episode. Very much looking forward to that, and always hard to believe that we have made it as far as we have, Pops. I know that the last couple weeks have been chock full of interesting information with guests from kind of all over the board. And tonight we are very excited to bring in yet another guest with a new topic that we have not covered. And we are so excited to talk about tonight. Before we do that, I will let you start us off with a quote and a toast.
All right. Well, welcome to the 4th Box podcast, everybody, coming to you from our virtual Buckman Tavern. We like to honor the Buckman Tavern, that very old and venerable place on the Lexington Green at which the Patriots back in 1775 met on that fateful morning that began the American Revolution with what is called the shot heard round the world. And we call ourselves the 4th Box Podcast, and we are tucked away safely in the virtual Buckman Tavern. So welcome, friends and patriots. As Bree mentioned, it's our 98th episode. We're creeping up on 100. Very excited to bring you a guest here tonight. Prior to that, I'm raising my glass tonight in toast to the Alaska Organized Militia, which includes the Air National Guard, Alaska State Defense Force, and the Alaska Naval Militia, which are still very much involved with the efforts up there and the people that were struck by that terrible storm back early in October along the coast up there south of Anchorage. A lot of damage, a lot of people displaced. So we are toasting tonight those that are still up there working, and we're also inviting anybody that wants to participate with folks like Samaritan's Purse and other disaster relief agencies that are up there helping those folks. For my quote tonight, technological progress has merely provided us with more efficient means for going backwards. That is from Aldous Huxley, and I hope that leads us in tonight to our guest and see where our discussion goes. So welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
We're certainly excited to have you. So I will do my little intro for you, but it will hardly scratch the surface. So I will defer to you after that. But tonight we are joined by Shannon Rowan, an artist, researcher, and author known as the Wi-Fi Refugee. Shannon has lived through the real health impacts of electromagnetic exposure and rebuilt her life off-grid. Her many books dig into the hidden costs of wireless technology, public health overreach, and the systems that quietly shape our behavior and erode personal sovereignty, which you all know is what we're talking about every week here on the 4th Box. Shannon brings a completely new perspective to a conversation the entire world needs to be a part of, even if they haven't yet realized it. So with that, welcome to the show, Shannon. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much. This is great. Yeah.
So why don't we just dive right into it? I know that you have several books, but tonight we're going to be talking about Wi-Fi Refugee and the Red Shoes. So let's start with the Wi-Fi Refugee. I think this is an important backstory and a little bit about your intro, because I think they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah. So I call myself Wi-Fi Refugee because, as it sounds, I've been fleeing from Wi-Fi, but not solely Wi-Fi, obviously, but all kinds of other, EMFs, so electromagnetic fields, and Wi-Fi is just one that's so ubiquitous now and so hard to get away from that's become kind of a way to describe ourselves. Technically, we're described as being electro-hypersensitive, or EHS, which is kind of a misnomer because it really kind of puts all the focus on us as like being too sensitive or flawed in some way, whereas I was like an ordinary person living my life and then got hit with this, and it used to be called microwave syndrome or microwave sickness back when it first kind of arrived. They kind of arrived on the scene with like the first radar operators. So it's the same kind of symptoms, which is a little bit of a long list, but I think what most of us who deal with this share in common is, well, first of all, we feel directly when we're around the exposures, we feel them directly and immediately. Sometimes the effects are delayed a little bit. So 2014, I started to feel like just holding my cell phone became unbearably painful. So leading up to that, I realized I had some symptoms I was kind of ignoring. I mean, I would hold the phone to my head and get a heating effect that was uncomfortable. And I started realizing that was a common thing a lot of people were feeling. And I wish I had known that was like a first sign of injury. And then I could have like stepped away from it more because, once you're injured and you keep re-injuring, it's like if somebody was like hitting you with a bat in the same place every time. It's like you could heal after like a couple of those, but if you keep doing it, right, it's like, yeah, it's eventually that's just going to be a mess and you're not going to be able to heal that. So it's like this repeated injury, and just even having to then learn that you can be injured by it and it isn't never been proven safe. Mostly it's been a deflection, the industry tactics of like, distraction and saying, well, we haven't proven that it's unsafe, although that's not true. And in fact, I'm just going to start off by telling everybody that's listening to go to emf-portal.org and you'll see 48,000 studies archived there, proving biological effects, mostly harmful effects. So of all kinds of electromagnetic fields that are so when I say EMF, I mean like non-native, man-made, artificial frequencies that are just not native to the planet. We are not adapted to deal with this. It's something like a weird thing that we're getting used to, I guess, but happening so quickly that it's hard to adjust to if we ever could do that. Some of us are more vulnerable to the effects, just like with any kind of toxin or poison in the environment. Some of us end up being more susceptible. I feel like everyone's affected to some degree because we all kind of understand that our hearts and brains and there's some electrical kind of functioning in our body that happens and cellular communication. And those are really, really weak fields. So when you have this other really powerful man-made field, that can interfere for sure. And even like from the perspective of somebody having a pacemaker, the label on the pacemaker, like the instructions will say like radio frequencies. And when I say radio frequency, that's basically anything wireless can have a radio frequency, can interfere with the pacemaker. So it's like,
yeah.
And that happens. Sometimes, people have died because of the interference from a smart meter or cell phone or, and it's, so really being experimented on here because it's like nobody really knows the long-term effects. We know some of them so far, and I can get into all of the ways that we're deceived with industry and these studies and to like trick us into kind of thinking it's okay or somebody's dealing with it. And obviously we wouldn't, they wouldn't let us use all this stuff. It was dangerous, right? I mean, look at the past history of like so many things that we've had that we've accepted as like, oh, safe for us because it's on the market, and turn out not to be. I mean, just over and over again, chemicals, lead, asbestos, DDT, Agent Orange, all these things that like wouldn't harm us, but oh, whoops, we were wrong. That's okay now. This one we don't know, but whatever. So I just became one of these people. I call myself a canary because, canary in the coal mine is like the analogy of the canary in the mines in the, 1800s where they'd alert the miners to lower levels of oxygen. And because they would feel that first and the bird would stop singing, fall off the perch. And that was how the miners knew to get out, so I'm a canary. I'm like, hey guys, we should get out of here. It's kidding. But so this has made it so that it's really intolerable for me to be around like near a Wi-Fi modem, near cell towers, near, cell phones, and have had to flee and move several times in my life, and I'm one of many.
Okay, so brief interruption for some technical difficulties. How perfect on a conversation about tech. But we're back, and a lot of questions already for you, Shannon. The very first one, though, how difficult is it to live a life where you're constantly running from something that feels like is inescapable?
Yes. It's pretty overwhelming at first. Luckily, I have a supportive partner, and that's pretty key. I mean, at first, honestly, we thought maybe it wouldn't be that hard to remediate. I couldn't get my downstairs neighbor to turn off her Wi-Fi for me, even at night. I realized it was interfering with my sleep, and I was getting migraines all the time after that point, and it was like just, yeah, and I could tell it was triggering from the Wi-Fi. And then I opted out the smart meter. I mean, we spent a year kind of trying to do remediation, but as time went on, it got worse as I was like in that all the time. And I did experiments with like going out of town camping on the weekend where there wasn't, interference, and I feel the difference. It's so good, and then my partner started to feel a difference too. He didn't think he was affected until he got away from it. And I think that's one of the main points, is that most people now it's like the slowly boiled frog in the pot. I mean, we're slowly getting sicker and feeling worse, but it's like been this kind of slow boil. So we don't really know that we kind of don't remember how we used to feel because we don't have a chance to experience that. And I feel like part of the reason it's encroaching like everywhere in a ridiculous way that's like totally unnecessary feels like just to get rid of the control group, like no control group to prove that this is harming you, because there could be so many other things. And then nobody remembers how it feels to feel vibrant and have so much energy and, feel that weight off of you, because it's like a pressure as well. So we had to we thought we could then move just outside the city, and then it just we realized there was cell towers everywhere. I hadn't even really been noticing them. I think like most people, I was looking down at my screen a lot that I was carrying around and didn't even know really what a cell tower looked like until I realized how much they were hurting me, and I could start feeling them even when I didn't see them. So yeah, we ended up moving to Arizona, kind of long story in my book about how we got out there, but found a totally radio quiet place, and in like a landline, internet connection and everything, and phone. And then after 5 years of doing better there, because I was able to get away from it, started healing, the smart grid came in, and we tried to stop it, but they wanted to put smart meters, and then they piggybacked 5G off of that. And so we had to move again, in addition to some of my neighbors who'd moved there for the same reason. And we ended up on the very west coast now, up northern California, the real northern California, which is like almost in Oregon. We throw a stone over to Oregon. And, surprisingly, I didn't think I'd end up in California, because when you look at antenna maps, it seemed like California was really saturated. But at the same time, there's more opportunities for actual remote wilderness living still. So for now, knock on wood, I've been okay, and I realized you can heal to at least some extent, and this seems to be a common story with other people like me, where if they get away enough and get their body a break enough, there is some recovery that happens that makes them a little less reactive, that makes them able to kind of function a little bit more again in the world. Because my first year of this, once we moved, we didn't really know what to expect, how long. We thought, oh, I just need a little time, or I'll be back to normal. And I didn't even know how sick I'd gotten and how bad it was. I couldn't even drive a car. It was the electromagnetic fields in the car. I had to be chauffeured if I went anywhere. I couldn't use our electric stove. I wasn't, I mean, my partner was cooking, he was doing the shopping. I couldn't go anywhere. It was very isolating. I've been a really social person. I thought I'd be able to nip into, Tucson and hang out with friends there. I had some friends there, and I couldn't do that. It turned out to be totally unrealistic. I just suffered too much afterward. And now it's 10 years later, I can now do things that other people do, but except get on a plane and, really travel really far distances. And I can't spend tons of time in towns, but I can do enough because I come back and we're off grid now completely, where we don't have electricity in the house. So I can really let my body relax. And we feel the difference. Even when I think I'm kind of adjusted and I feel okay in town, there's a palpable difference coming home. And my partner feels it too. You're oh, wait, we thought we were okay, but wow, this feels way better. And now I didn't realize how much that was weighing me down and how much that was affecting me. Even I should know that, but it's it is a kind of thing that you kind of normalize. Your body tries to compensate, and you kind of go, oh, okay, I think you feel it at first, and then you're no, I think I'm okay. And then, and then I do notice it's hard to calm my system down when I get home after I've been in town all day. I'm kind of hyper hyped up and have to calm down. So there's this thing going on with the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, and that your sympathetic nervous system's the fight, flight,
response, and you get sort of stuck in that. That's definitely a thing that's happening with people who deal with this. And so it's really hard to get back into the parasympathetic to calm down. And I think a lot of people are dealing with that because the screens are stimulating, the blue light stimulating, the design of the internet and all the apps and everything is for maximizing user engagement, and it's meant to be addictive. So you're like, everybody's getting high. They're all like, kind of like, all the time. We're all like really hyperactive and don't even realize this is the new normal. And then it's like hard to sleep because you can't calm down. And then you've got the stuff on at night, and people don't know why they're having all these problems. And so but it's better now. It's easier, and there's certain things I'm used to that sound crazy to other people, the way I live and the workarounds I kind of have to do in the world. But it's worth it. And actually, in a way, I'm glad, because it's like been a blessing in disguise. I love living the way we do, and I don't think I would have ever chosen it intentionally had I not been forced into it. So, yeah.
Wow, what a story. And to go back to your analogy about you kind of being the canary in that sense is so interesting and so apt, because I know you do go into some of the symptoms that you see in the book, and you just kind of touched on a few of them, but there are so many issues as far as chronic disease and ailments in society. I mean, try and name a person that that doesn't have something, and there's 1,000 different directions we can point our finger for where the blame lies. But at the heart of all of it, this could be it, or it's at least a contributing factor that's exacerbating one of those other factors. So I am just amazed at the implications of what you have to say, and how maybe there are so many of us that are suffering in some capacity, similar to the way that you have, without even recognizing that this could be to blame.
Yeah, totally. And actually, that was my partner. And I have another friend who's like me, who's his partner, his wife, same thing for her. Like, a lot of things cleared up when they got out of the EMF. Like, they did a shielded home they built. And, once he realized it was affecting him, and she suddenly had these, chronic complaints that went away that she never would have linked to that. So I think, again, without the chance of getting away and comparing and testing this, it's hard for people to pin it on that. And there are a lot of other things that threaten us and our health, so many that it is tricky and hard to, and it's easy to say like it's something else. And it could be, I think there's definitely like a synergistic thing, happening. And I think possibly one reason I was more affected maybe than the next person was because of my own history of like vaccines and, poisonous exposures, and even like the fact that like there was a mold issue in like a toxic mold issue in my apartment at the time. Definitely, and a gas leak I was living with, right? So like contributing factors that pushed me over the edge in terms of my toxic body burden and not being able to cope with that. And so I think a lot of the stories are similar, like mine. And so the first thing we address is like, well, let's see anything we can to get rid of that, toxic load. And then you can maybe have a chance of recovering. Because I think the body will naturally recover on its own if it just if you can stop poisoning it for a minute, right?
Like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So can I jump, Bree?
Yeah,
Shannon, I'm really interested in, are there any statistics on how many people are affected? And is your level of being affected by these conditions, is this what you would consider on the high end? Are there so many people walking around with lesser symptoms that don't even recognize it? I know there's two questions there, but thirdly, then, did your background lend you to be inquisitive in this area? Did you have some kind of medical background or something that allowed you to start thinking about these conditions affecting you?
Yeah, good question. So firstly, percentage wise, it varies. There's some like official numbers. The problem with getting a gate reading on that is that it's usually like self-reported, so people who are aware of it. And then a lot of the people who are aware of it and dealing with it aren't the kind of people who are going to answer the surveys. They're not even online, that they don't ever find them, So it's there's different like estimates of like what's the officially reported versus what's more probable. But officially reported in California is 3%, which is pretty high. I mean, that's a lot of people in just one
Sure.
state. Also, there's like estimates of much higher percentages in other countries, in particular, likely with like Taiwan as being like 10%, because
Oh,
they've had
wow.
these technologies a lot longer and more intensively. So, but for the most part, it seems to correlate a bit with like how many. It's like so it goes from like, yeah, 3, 5 to 10, 15%, 20% even possibly. But it's like similar to the people who are affected by storms and feel that, I think, percentage wise, which is interesting. So there've always been like people are a little bit more like electrically sensitive to those atmospheric environmental changes. Um, I am on the more extreme end, I think. I have met more extreme than me rarely. So and I'm a lot better. So there was the period of time where I was very extreme, like that first year, and then had a lot of recovery. And a lot of people I know who've been that extreme too have actually managed to recover quite a lot and are doing, and able to, even with all the like new encroachment. So it's interesting. I think we've figured out some pieces of the puzzle of like detoxing and, getting more resilient. But one of the key thing in all the cases I know of where there's been success is having a place to go to get enough away from exposures to recover, whether that's just at night or even some cases like a month out of the year or something, just to get your body to reset. Now, in terms of my background, I've been always an inquisitive person, troublemaker that way, asking too many questions. If you ask my parents and teachers growing up, but and that led me into, I was a writer, I was a journalist for a time. So I was a photojournalist primarily, but I wrote for magazines too. So I wrote stories in magazines. So I have a writer's background and I have a news kind of background. I also have a health kind of research background just because of my own, again, like I think like a lot of people now having weird kind of mystery chronic, now they're calling autoimmune. Everybody has autoimmune disease suddenly, and there's so many of them, and trying to figure myself out for years, even leading up to that with other things, and not getting satisfactory answers from the like mainstream medicine, trying mainstream medicine paths that led me, seemed to worsen the conditions, or like an example, like getting a UTI, like urinary tract infection, and then taking antibiotics because that's what they give you, and then running the course of that, and then feeling okay during it, and then after I'm done, wow, much worse, bleeding, horrific pain, go back, they give me another one, and then you're like suddenly you're getting like prone to them. And then I'm like just getting them, and like for years I was having, that's the only thing I took them for, and then finally I found other real medicine that like now I don't get them anymore. But I was on that treadmill of the hamster wheel of like taking the medicine that's making me feel better for a little bit and making me worse again and then making me worse again. And so and they're calling that like bacterial resistance to antibiotics, but I'm just calling it poison.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
yeah. Yeah, so poisonous medicine, and I'm just was dissatisfied with that. And interestingly, that led me into kind of researching, well, and taking a lot of like, seemingly alternative medicines. So getting into supplements and things, and only in more recent years, really understanding how dangerous that can be, and how often it's the same players, like pharmaceutical companies manufacturing these chemical synthetic vitamins and supplements, or supplements that you don't, you think you're getting one thing, but it's not regulated. It could be drugs in it. Often they're finding drugs in natural supplements, later. So I probably did a lot more damage than good in those years of experimenting with high doses of, vitamins or some kind of, pill. And so now I don't take any pills. I'm just like, no powders even, because I don't really know what's in there. It's like if I take a medicine, it's from my herb garden that I grew, and that's it. So yeah.
Could
do
I?
you have a follow up to that?
Yeah, I do. So I'm really curious as to how most people might be able to isolate themselves from the bombardment that we're constantly under. And I was particularly interested, even today's automobiles have microprocessors and all these are they also a risk factor? So a traditional automobile, I mean, I have a very, very old vehicle that I don't run very often that wouldn't have any of those things. But are the standard vehicles on the road today? And then secondarily, the first part of the question, how far do you have to get away? And I think you suggested even electricity, so the current or the circuits in your house can even be affecting you, correct?
Yes. So, oh, and I forgot to answer your earlier question about other people's like different, yeah, there's kind of like a spectrum of this, in terms of like people's how much they're affected, because it really depends on exposure levels and how long you've had them. Because I actually adapted the tech earlier than most people I know because of being in photojournalism. So I had a cell phone. I didn't really want one, but I had to have it for work, like before all my friends had them, and I lived abroad for a while in places that had adapted this before us here as well. So that could have contributed. I don't know. I mean, it does seem like it can take like a decade or so before you see the cumulative effects. You can have like more acute exposures and have like more obvious effects short term as well. But yes, the EV cars. So there are people like going on with this around the symptoms and not linking it to it, and then there are people who are aware, they're sensitive, and they don't suffer as much as me. And there's a lot of them smart enough to realize they are affected and they take more precautions, and that's probably saving them from going further, getting further injury. Um, but the EVs, like especially electric vehicles, and also newer cars are a nightmare to me and sensitive people like me. I cannot even get in them, and I can even be in a hybrid, vehicle. It's like that's too much for me. And I actually, my brother recently said like he gets what I'm dealing with, because he says he's been, when he's in a Tesla, it's like he feels that and he doesn't feel good after. So some people who maybe you might not feel it with your cell phone, you might not even feel it with your Wi-Fi, but then there's something stronger you'll feel it with.
Okay.
And I think more people are noticing that, but it's a total nightmare in the making for me. I have a car that's 20 something years old. Both of our vehicles are, and I really can't have a newer vehicle than that. So yeah, and that's, but getting away from it. So a lot of people, again, depending on how bad it is for you, but I mean, people do end up just kind of compromising and suffering a bit, I mean, what can you do? You just do your best. And it's like with cigarette smokes when everybody used to smoke everywhere, and I was one of the people who was affected by that as well, and I wasn't accommodated for the most part, so I just had to kind of put up with it, and then get away later. That was a little easier though, because at least I could go outside or eventually get away from it, but if you had your neighbor smoking, or I mean, there's cases where like you don't get away from it as much as you need to, and then but the problem with this is really the infrastructure, often more than the devices because that are running them. So these antennas keep going up. If they're right outside your home or on top of your home, then, I mean, that's something to really be concerned about, because that's a larger power, talking about power levels too. And so like the phone is bad, but like a tower is going to be worse. I think most insidious is really a Wi-Fi routers in people's homes. And some of them they're not all the same, because you could have like a Wi-Fi hotspot, and you wouldn't even know your modem is doing that, because there was this whole thing going on, I don't know if it still is, where companies were trying to boast so many hotspots with their modems, and they would just do that by giving customers like this crazy high power thing that shouldn't be in their homes, and not tell them, and you wouldn't know unless you had a meter. Or if you felt, I mean, again, people might feel bad and they don't know why, because often it's like headaches or insomnia or just brain fog or like joint pains or even heart arrhythmia, nausea, like chest pains. Those are all the kind of things that I've dealt with, and not able to like get away from that. But I think it is harder and harder, and that's why it's such a big issue, and why I keep trying to tell people I'm one of the luckier ones. I mean, the main question I get from people when they listen to my podcast or get my books, who are realizing they're dealing with this, or newly usually, or like they ask me where can they go, especially if they're new to it. They're like, well, do you know somewhere? I'm like, well, there isn't like an answer like here's where you go. And although that mainstream media would like people to think there is, because there's a place called Green Bank in West Virginia, which is the National Radio Quiet Zone, where they have this space telescope for listening into space. And it was like, and we were going to go check it out, but it was winter. And then we heard some things about it that made us think, well, we don't want to go out, live in that place. Let's try somewhere else warmer and everything too. And it was like, but it's over time slowly not so radio quiet anymore because of just like that demand. And it's like they've had to just try to deal with it. And so it used to be like really strict, no Wi-Fi in town anywhere, for so many miles, and there was no cell signal, nothing. But now then they went to like lower powered, and now there's just increasing. And there's things like dirty electricity, and also it's like it's a small place. There's not like room for all of us there, and the locals weren't even. I heard that welcoming of when people kind of started hearing about it and descending upon them from all over the world, and they're like, who's these crazy people that also complaining about fluorescent lighting and and want organic foods, and like, and they don't have them there. And it's so, and like, so there's not much real estate, then what's there can be expensive, and now it's kind of compromised. So there isn't one place to go. What I think people end up doing is they're shielding materials. So you can actually, we did this, we made a Faraday cage around our bed when we were still in Washington, D.C., trying to figure out what to do. And it made a big difference. I mean, I was able to at least finally sleep a lot better. So that was able to block the signals completely. We did it in a way that totally surrounded the bed. It was like a frame with aluminum screening on it and a door. And the door, even around the door, we put like aluminum tape so that there was no way for anything to get in there. But I understand that 5G can penetrate that, though this was with 4G. So, I mean, there's unfortunately, because that's millimeter wave instead of microwave. With a microwave, you could just have, that couldn't get through those small holes, whereas millimeter wave's smaller. So it's harder to block that. And then you have issues of like, well, you're shielding it, but then it's creating like picking up low frequency when you have a metal thing around you, and that's creating a bit of an EMF low frequency field as well, and that's not great. So it's like I would sleep better than I was, but not really be refreshed when I woke up. So there are things. You also asked about like electricity in your home. So there's definitely a lot. I don't want to like discourage people. There's a lot of things you can do for sure to make things way better no matter where you are. And one thing is like making sure you don't have what's called dirty electricity, which is where your house wiring picks up the radio frequency. So this is happening a lot more now that like our power lines are kind of overwhelmed with all these, people are using all these different electronics, and they're at different frequencies that are not meant to ride on these power lines or in your house. So it's supposed to be 60 hertz, and then you have things that are higher than that, and they don't work that well. So what they'll do, it'll create like a cage effect in your home where you have this EMF field that's created from that shouldn't be there. It should just be like confined to your wiring and not kind of spilling out into your space. So again, meters to measure these things, you can get, in that case, though, you can get filters. There's different ways of filtering, and some of them are just plugins, and they really help a lot. In some cases, it's very easy to change. Sometimes it's just like you need to get rid of a dimmer switch or fluorescent bulbs or certain things that can cause that. If you have a smart meter, that can be a problem in terms of that as well. But like if you have anything you have that might be a problem, you don't want it sleeping next to you. Like, are you sleeping next to it? Excuse me. Or like, no, and maybe it's sleeping. They say our computers sleep, but and more so as they get like more intelligent and
yeah, totally.
But don't have them sleeping next to you. Yeah, I mean, you want to have your head, even like moving your bed away from the wall with the wires in it, like and plugs and things, unplugging things, turning things off. It'll save your electricity bill a lot too, but start to see how you feel with like these things turned off. Everything's on all the time now, and so just any distance is going to be a lot of help, and other things like when you realize, okay, well, there's certain, if I can get rid of like, stop doing that, and then, eliminate other poisons, and then just get more breaks from it, you'll see your body hopefully, can recover, and you might notice like, oh, that thing was actually from that. I didn't know. So I think we can still do a lot. I think what's the hardest is, the more antennas that are put up with people being able to have a say, even like on their property or something, is where it gets tricky. And that includes like smart meters. But in that case, I would recommend moving. If you've got a like big tower that got put up outside your home, close by, that's like you don't want to be there, unfortunately. But then it makes it hard to sell if you own your home, because then your property value goes down. So thanks for that, telecoms.
Yeah.
How close is how close is too close for if we're
Yeah,
I mean,
I
I
would.
can see one on the far mountain. Am I too close?
Oh, I think that's not. I mean, if you're super sensitive, line of sight means you're getting a signal, and like don't want that. But like if it's miles away on the mountain, that's like really not the kind of problem I think that I'm talking about, like in terms of hundreds of feet or 10,
Okay.
10 feet or do what in
Sure.
feet, not miles, right? So
Okay.
miles is good. But it depends on what it is. There's some systems, like if it's military stuff, that are really powerful and travel really long distances. And I don't know what to say about that. So yeah, I mean, again, first thing I recommend is people get a meter, and then you get to see what's really going on around you and see what you can change and what you can't, and then make decisions based on that.
Yeah. Shannon, do you think it's safe? Do you think it's safe to say that a lot of this is probably cell phone generated, since almost everybody's walking around with one plastered to the side of their head most of the time that they're awake?
Yeah, definitely. But it's increasing into like weird things like smart watches and
Sure.
the Internet of Things that's descending upon us. So it can be like, oh, the Bluetooth earbuds are sometimes worse than the cell phones. I mean, that's one of those
Okay.
things I just cringe. I see kids wearing them and stuff. I'm like, it's right in there all the time. Like, do not use those things. Those are horrible. Even this thing I'm using here, it's actually like an air. It's also can be called like an AirPod, but I don't mean, so that it's confusing with the names, but air tube actually. So it's a tube that is just air, that doesn't have electronics in it. There's no
Oh,
electronics in this piece,
I got
because
it.
then I don't have electronics are down here and I don't have it right in my brain. So that's helpful. It's maybe not the best. I mean, I'm sure the sound quality isn't as good as what you guys are wearing, but I actually have trouble like just wearing regular headphones now, because I can feel that even a battery, to me, like holding a flashlight for too long, I can feel it in my hand. It's uncomfortable.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
So, um,
That's amazing.
yeah.
I imagine that because you have been able to step, so far outside of it, that when you re-immerse yourself with those things, it becomes especially
Oh, yeah.
noticeable.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of it. And it's very similar to, so I'm also chemically sensitive, and that increased at the same time as my EMF sensitivity. And it's considered to be two sides of the same coin. And like there's literature on this, publications like showing that it's kind of like the same, disease of like hypersensitivity. And so almost everybody I've met with this is also like, ooh, chemically sensitive, like fragrances, perfumes, like no, get away, right? But some are like more extreme with we call MCS, multiple chemical sensitivity. They're more extreme with that sometimes than the EHS. So it's like a flip. So usually like one is worse than the other. Sometimes I find that the like chemical sensitivity is harder to deal with because you can't turn that off. Like people with perfume around you, like you can't shut it off. But if somebody's with a cell phone near you, you can be like, can you turn off your cell phone or put it on airplane mode for me? And then you get a little relief. But my gosh, like the perfumes.
Yeah.
But again, it's just like, and the more, what was the point I was going to make about that? I don't remember what you're just saying,
Like being away from it and then coming
yeah.
back
Oh,
into
that's what I
it.
want to say. Yeah. Like, so when I realized that was affecting me too, and I thought I was using all natural products before that time, and then I realized I wasn't, because it's very sneaky. The labels can be really deceptive.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I would have friends, I'm like, oh yeah, your perfume. And they're like, I don't wear perfume. It's the natural oils. I'm like, it is not. And then they call the company and they're like, oh yeah, I guess it isn't. And they're like, sure that it is. They're like, no, it's natural essential oils. I'm like, no, they're not. I'm telling you, they're not. My nose is telling you. And, and then they find out. So I had that going on. I had clothes that I had to basically throw away. Sadly, I couldn't get the smells out. And I realized, yeah, when I got clean of it, like, so when you do this for anything, like alcohol, sugar, whatever, that you kind of like get used to and you're a bit addicted to, and you get rid of it and you're clean, then it's so strong. So now so in a way, yeah, I feel more sensitive getting away from it in terms of like that heightened awareness, but also I'm more tolerant as well. It's a strange thing. It's like a little bit paradoxical, but I am like more able to handle exposures because I'm away and clean of it than I was. But yeah, it'll be similar to like I'm actually off sugar again, and I hadn't done that in a while. And I hadn't been like having lots of sugar, but it had been kind of sneaking in. And I just went off this last week, and because I had this skin flare up and like eczema kind of thing, and wow, like I didn't realize it changes your taste buds. Like everything tastes different now, and like it's a lot more powerful. Like my foods, I'm like, well, that's really strong. Like once you kind of, if you go on like a bland diet and you don't have those spices and you don't have the sugar, and then you add that in, you're like, whoa. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah. No,
yeah.
that's a great analogy. It's so interesting. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit. This whole backstory about the health problems that you have faced through your life is so important for people to kind of understand and recognize. And it's definitely, I think, kind of like a basis for jumping into this Red Shoes book, which is your newest book. And I would really love to jump into that a little bit if we could. There is so much in here that was just, I was enthralled, truthfully. These are things that you sort of get in the back of your mind as like a lingering thought. And when you see it all in writing with all of these different case studies and statistics and references to, CIA projects, things of this nature, things much older than that, and on, it really starts to make sense how all of these things that you have faced, all these health concerns are actually so much more tied to a lot of other components that seemingly have a malicious intent behind them. And some of the things that you say in this book very early on, very simple things that you say, you lead right into where this book goes. Like when you say surfing the web should be spelled SERFING, because it makes a serf of all of us, a slave. And you discuss very early on how this is an addiction, the same as any other addiction. You just referred to it moments ago saying got clean of it. That is not the way anyone is thinking of this subject, but it has to become the way that we're thinking about it, or this problem is going to get worse and worse and worse until there is no solving it. So let's get into that a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about what you call the dance of technology and this concept of red shoes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And the reason I start writing this book is because I was getting frustrated with seeing people not interested in hearing about EMF harm from their tech use. And I was like, why don't they want to know this? Like, you think that would be like, they'd be like, oh, please tell me so I can protect myself, my children. Nope. It's just like this kind of, it hit me that it's addiction, because that's just like, again, with the cigarettes, people said, no, 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 couldn't be, because they're sitting there chain smoking, they're addicted to it. They don't want to hear that. It's very inconvenient, so that addiction always drives denial with anything. Right. And it's like, and we can have that blind sight. We can be like, just have our blinders on about there's certain something that we do that we don't want to see that, and I just use that example of like sugar in my diet and getting out of it. I wouldn't want to really hear that when I think I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm not really eating that much sugar. And then it's, then my body started telling me something else. And I'm like, okay, I'll pay attention to that. And then it's like, makes me see how so many things that should just are designed to be addictive, food, drugs, our medicines, so-called. And that's a kind of enslavement, so we get caught up and we get like just going after these hits all the time. And that's how we end up approaching life, so this instant gratification of everything, like everything has to be exciting. And, and we can't just appreciate and slow down and live in a more like sane way. And we don't really see our own insanity. So the reason I call the book The Red Shoes, or Devil's Dance with Technology and How We Can Stop It, is the tagline for that. But because the story of the red shoes, and many people don't know this, but it was Hans Christian Andersen. I use a little bit of a different telling of it because there's a few different tellings of it. But I think he first popularized that in 1700s. And it was like a girl in the woods who has her own handmade life. So I see that as like a sovereign existence, independent, right? So it's hard, and she struggles a bit, but she's making her own red shoes, and they're kind of crude and, not very fancy. And she makes her own food, and she's doing okay. But then, it's hard. Sometimes you're like, I just don't want to have to get up today and do this for myself. And so one of those days where she's like feeling like kind of like not really wanting to work, a gilded carriage approaches, and it just comes out of nowhere. And there's this old woman who's part blind, and there's all these symbolism in this whole story. And I get into some of that. But she offers to take her home, this poor orphan girl in this poor clothes, and like feed her. She's wealthy. She can just take care of all of her needs. She won't have to work ever again. And so it's so tempting, right? We have this thing approach telling us that like it can solve all of our problems for us. We don't have to do anything. And it's like glittery and shiny and it's magical. But the minute you step in, you're stepping into a trap. And that's what she finds out kind of too late when she's in the old woman's home, and she immediately takes all her clothes and her shoes and burns them, which is like, she didn't allow that. It just happened. And then she replaces them, and she feels like that kind of sense of like her own creation being destroyed and her losing that freedom she had. And then getting kind of having to sit there and be isolated and, bored and not have a purpose. And we're creative beings, like humans, we're tool makers, we're creators. And when you take that away from people, they grab for whatever they can to replace that. And, so that promise, it seems like it'll be easy or it'll make you feel creative, but it's not really allowing you to reach your full potential of creativity and use your full body and intellect and spirit and everything. You're just like reduced. And so this is really reductive technology. It's like reducing us, and it's reversing these roles of like what I see as tool and master. So her shoes are taken away. Then she ends up replacing them. She gets to choose new shoes, and she picks the glittery, shiny red shoes that represented what she lost. And she thinks she can fill that, space with the new shoes, but they turn out to be a trap because they turn out to be cursed, in fact. And there's these enablers in the story who are, grooming. It seemed like they're groomers, these like male figures, generally older men. And the shoemaker is one of them. He's kind of winking at her like, yeah, take these. This will be great. And then there's this there's this devil figure at the church, outside the church, a wounded soldier with a red beard who ends up cursing her shoes and telling them to dance, telling her to dance in them. And then that's when the shoes, at first it's kind of fun, they're dancing her, but then it's not so fun when she can't stop. And they're in control of her, and they end up dancing her to her own destruction, ultimately. I mean, she's so trapped in them that she ends up having to have somebody cut her feet off to get the shoes off because they won't come off. And so in the end, she's disabled and she's reduced to a beggar, and that's what happens to her. So I just saw that as perfect for like what we're living now, and most of us without knowing it, that we're saying the tech is sort of like, here I am, I'm shiny, and I can do all these things for you. You don't have to do it. But then what is it taking from us in the process, and can we ever get out of this? And it does feel like this, because when you're in control of your tools, because people are like, oh, it's just a tool, it's just a tool. A tool doesn't have an agenda. You're in charge of that. There's agendas with these tools. They're pinging at you, and they're beeping at you, and they're telling you how to behave when you're using them. Right, not the other way around. So
yeah,
and that's what I saw, and I started to and like you, I actually was very revealing for me to do the research and to write this, because I start to see my own entrapment in the shoes. Even as somebody who's fled technology in a lot of ways, I'm still using the internet, and even like shorter periods of time on the internet. I didn't realize before how much it was changing my brain, and how with the multitasking and the opening tabs everywhere. I think I coined this term, and I make a joke that I don't look it up because I don't want to know that, I don't want to have the internet tell me somebody else did it, but I call it being a tabaholic, and tabaholism. And so I'm like definitely a tabaholic, and I've tried to be aware of that now, because it's not just, it's doing more than you realize, and it's like, so if I'm online, and in fact, I have to be on shorter bounds of time because I have to kind of travel to my internet spot, and it can be cold like today. And I'm like, okay, I have, an hour or 2 hours. I got to get all my research, get all these articles, and I'll download them. Like I'll load them offline. I'll save them as PDFs so I can read them later. And then, but I'll end up like just opening those tabs, and kind of jumping. My mind is like, brain is like, and what we're doing, it's training us to be more like a computer, and to have like these really short attention spans. And then to go from that and try to go into calm, slow down mode, and to deep thought, reading mode is hard, really hard. And so you have to be aware what's happening, what you're trading, and how it's changing you. And I think we're just mostly not aware of that. So I'm still susceptible to that. And I think we're all susceptible because we're all vulnerable in some way. So we have different vulnerabilities, and these are all exploited. So there's something for everybody online with our tech, with our apps. It's like if you like games, and you're going to get sucked into the gaming world. If you're like social media, there's that for you. There's shopping, there's pornography, there's entertainment, there's news, there's info, info addiction. And it's really all addiction to novelty. So it's like something new all the time. And that's like a dopamine hit, a dopamine hit, a dopamine hit. And we've never before in history with anything gotten dopamine hits with such little effort, which is what is so dangerous about it and why it's so addicting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know that we're probably going to have a ton of questions already just based off of that, but we're already creeping up on an hour. So before we take any more of your time, how much more time do you have so we know how to frame the rest of this?
Yeah, actually, we didn't even discuss that before, did we? And which is, and it's a good thing to talk about because this is something where the boundaries issue with tech use, right? Now we're like, oh, we can just do this anytime. So we kind of forget to make boundaries for ourselves and around our time. And I appreciate you asking that. I would say my cutoff point is another hour. So it depends on what you guys want to do.
Okay, we can keep going. We'll let you go sooner than an hour.
Okay.
But I think we definitely have a lot more questions, so we appreciate your availability. Sure. Certainly.
Great. Okay.
So, Dad, I can see you're kind of chomping here, so go right ahead.
Well, I love the analogy, Shannon, of the red shoes in this story, and tying that to the electronics and how we're basically addicted in so many ways to the convenience and what it does for us. As you indicated, there's something for everybody. And my mind immediately went even a step further. And I think society at large, and we talk about this often, really views government in the same way. I think we as a society are so dependent on government doing things for us, and we blindly accept their answers. And I feel the same way you do about being enslaved as a result of this. Enslaved to the electronic world, but we're also enslaved to those in government that are providing these solutions. And now we don't have to think for ourselves. And largely, I think we've become unaccountable because we've become dependent on somebody else to provide the answers. And that's where my mind went immediately as you were describing the story of the red shoes and how it tied into the electronic side. It transitioned it also into the whole broader picture of how we as a society view government, how we are so easily distracted by the bread and circuses that they provide for us, or at least they are some part of providing for us. And we subsequently have drifted away from taking care of those things that we as persons, as individuals, should be taking care of for ourselves.
Oh, totally. And look at the state we're in, relying on government more and more. Is it helping us? Just like the same question I asked about our reliance on tech. Are we healthier, happier, wiser, actually smarter? No. I mean, clearly we're not. And we're in a epidemic of crazy diseases that we've never had before. I mean, it's just getting worse and worse and so quickly. And it's so normalized. Like people, the obesity, the diabetes, it's just everybody has this stuff. And it's like, this is a crisis, and obviously we've been relying on government. We keep going back to them though. Like we keep going back to Big Brother, please take care of this for me again, or you're at fault again. And interestingly, this is all government, definitely tied in. Government's got their fingers in this. Definitely.
Oh, sure.
I mean, this is goes back to, the early internet, and it was actually ARPANET. It was a defense research project. It was tied into, they've been studying, missiles and then humans and how to control us with cybernetics, and that means cyber means to steer, and it was sort of like how do we cure violence in the brain in society, and it comes from the brain. Let's put electrodes in the brain and do microwave lobotomies essentially, and making how to make a psycho-civilized person or citizen, And how to do that was like, well, if we manipulate this environment, and that's how this is how the internet was birthed. It was like this idea of manipulating our environment and affecting our perception of reality to manipulate us and control us. And the government's totally involved in that. I mean, this is military, this is intelligence agencies. And then on top of that, I mean, it's been tech lobbying, for how long now, all the money that gets put into government. And now we're hearing about AI programs for government to run it. I mean, come on. It's like, where's this going to end? Nowhere good. Yeah, but it's again like turning to the wrong places and not being responsible for ourselves. Like even with what I've been through and where I am now, I'm not turning to government. I'm not trying to get disability. I mean, first, I don't want to put myself through that. I know how hard it is. I don't want to have to go to the medical route of things and go to a doctor and prove I'm still disabled and prove I can't get a job and prove, and like be subject to that and that humiliation and that, and then to like get some measly check that's not even going to really support me. Because people are like, why don't you do that? I'm like, because it's insane. I don't really think that they are responsible and that, yes, like in a way they're directly responsible, but I'm still trying to take responsibility, right? And like not feed into that and not look to that to save me, because I don't think that they never had my interests in mind in the first place. I don't think they're going to. So like the only alternative we're going to have is if we start to come up with creative solutions. If we make alternative places for ourselves, environments for ourselves that are healthier, and we do something about it, so again, like I said earlier, I feel like this is a blessing because I've learned to do so many things, like creative things. I knit, I bake, I do all these things I never did. I wild forage for food and have extensive gardens. My partner builds things. I've sewn tents. I've made stuffed quilts and even a futon and all these things that is yeah, my handmade life I'm making. And it's so much more satisfying. I'm not bored ever. Like people are bored, but they're also complaining they don't have any time. And I'm like, well, what's sucking your time up? I play guitar. I mean, there's so many things people can be doing and they don't have to feel depressed and suicidal. I mean, why are kids and adults feeling that way? Why are they so depressed and suicidal? Because they're letting tech do everything for them. That's not a comfortable way to exist. That's not how we're supposed to exist. That's not what we're here for. Are we here to just be entertained? It just seems, and it feels so empty and people feel that and they're still, again, looking to the wrong thing to fill that void. And it is not, they feel purposeless and it isn't going to ever fill that. So we have to turn away from it and start getting back to things we used to do that we've forgotten about that used to make us happy, so.
Yeah.
I so appreciate that whole segment, the foraging and the doing things for yourself without this dependency that we all seem to have fallen into. And that really aligns with a lot of our previous podcasts. That was just perfect explanation of how you have turned to yourself for solutions. I think that's such a lesson for the whole country.
Yeah, and I don't see a doctor. People think I'm being irresponsible for not seeing a doctor, which is really funny to me. I think it's the opposite. But I haven't in so many years. I don't always reveal this on shows, but I even made my own front teeth here. It's a denture I made. It's a little bit lispy today because I need to do some tweaking on it. But I just stopped going to dentists. They couldn't find a solution for me for the teeth that they destroyed and took out. So I had to do it.
Yeah.
And guess what? It cost $12.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
This is so great. I agree, Dad. I love this whole conversation right now. It is so interesting to me that all of these things that you have taught yourself to do, so many skills that you would not have acquired if you were still living in that headspace that all of us are, where we're totally absorbed. What's so interesting about it is that almost all of those skills are inherently kind of survival skills. So these things that you came back to fill your time once you were removed from the one thing that was sucking all of it up were the very things that you were inherently meant to be doing as a human interacting with your natural environment. And it is so amazing to me when I think about how that is automatically where your life led when we also think about the governmental component to these tools. and the mind control aspect of these tools. Because if these tools were not in play, the dependency on the government goes away immediately. If thousands of millions of people were doing this same thing that you did, removing themselves from technology and jumping into this kind of lifestyle, we would not need government anymore at all.
Exactly.
They'd be right back in the very, very small bit of space they're supposed to occupy.
Right.
Very, very small. That is perfect. Yeah, exactly
It's
right.
like we put them there for us and our needs, not the other way. It got all kind of reversed. And and one thing I've learned with the survival stuff is like when people hear about survival skills, that sounds kind of daunting and like something that, oh, you only do if you really have to because you have to survive. But I've realized that all these civilizations and for how many years who were more like survival based in a way, in a sense, like it's actually enjoyable. It's not meant to be really arduous and horrible. It's enjoyable. It's wonderful to have, like, it's all creative. It's like and everything's an art, and it's a joy. And so it's like, it's not really just about surviving. In fact, I kind of see people who are like stuck in urban centers as like just surviving in a sense, and just trying to survive. And the people who are like connected to the land don't, it's so much more liberating.
Mm-hmm. Life skills, not life survival skills, life skills.
Yeah. And that's how people, I learned this. I think I came back to something I learned. I had a stint in Ireland for like a year. I'd been living in New York City and kind of like the rat race there. And I got really tired of it. And I took a trip to Ireland. I decided to go back and live there. And I went to work on organic farms. And it was so enlightening to me. I was like, this is the way that we're supposed to live. I was like, this is amazing. And what was interesting too, and I didn't really connect to this until later, is I didn't have any electricity where I was. And I felt really good. And it was also great because there was no TV. There was no distraction that the electricity provides either. So we got up, and that was the reversal of like what we do normally 90% of our time inside, 10% out, or sometimes less for some people, was like reversed. It was like 90% outside. And I was like, this is amazing. I felt like anything could be cured. Anybody dealing with any problem could be cured if they just did this. It felt so good. But most people would be like, oh, I don't want to do that. It sounds crazy. Like, that sounds hard. And, and I noticed that the culture there, that people didn't ask, like, what do you do? They're not defining themselves by like one job, because everybody did so many different things that they were multifaceted people that didn't define themselves by one thing. And they also didn't limit themselves then. So it's like the people who are making bread down the road or making pottery are also doing this, and they're painting, or they're, and they're also making crafts, and they're also like growing food, and they also have goats, and, and like people are trading goods and things. And it's like, and some play music and some don't. And it's like, there's not just this sort of like, I have to be this cog in the machine thing that we do here, So that was really opened my eyes. And I unfortunately couldn't stay longer because of visas and money. And I got sucked back into the, machine. And here I am, like so many years later, actually getting to live that lifestyle again, which I really felt like I wanted. Deep inside me was like, I wanted to live that way again. And what's sad is I think that's disappeared a lot. Like even in that place, it's changed because of technology, because, it's not really what it was. People are also screen addicted there, and it's been, we brought it to everybody. Aren't they so happy with, they're so, we don't want to leave anybody out of this. Like, they'd be underprivileged, right?
Yeah.
Another just super point there, I think, is valuable for all of us. It's the comparison you made about spending time outside. At least you're some distance away from the crap that we're being bombarded with day in and day out, and it is a much more friendly environment for your body to be in. And I think so many people today are repulsed by that. Subsequently, as you mentioned just moments before that, the super high rates of diabetes, the super high rates of heart disease, obesity, all these other things, because I mean, largely we're laying around like a bunch of slugs instead of out fending for ourselves and working in the garden and being exposed to the sun's rays and without your shoes on in contact with the earth and all of those things. Instead, the majority of society seems to be put off by the very things that could help make them healthy.
It's amazing. It's such a trap.
Yeah.
It's so it's kind of ingenious in this really evil way. But yeah, it's like we just got so our values, everything's just kind of turned on its head. And I think and some people do, I think, oh, that sounds, more and more I think people hear how I live and like, that sounds awesome. And I'm like, it is awesome. But then if they were just dropped into it, they would pretty much freak out and hate it, because I think because it's the stuff we do every day. Like, I mean, gosh, there were 3 months where we actually had to get water from the creek and carry it to the house because our plumbing wasn't, working yet. And but everything is like wood stove heat, so you're chopping wood every day, and it's just like stuff you do every day, and just to get anywhere, to go somewhere, it's like a long drive. I mean, my old self, like city urban me, would have had to have music on or something on, like a distraction. But I just drive for an hour to get to town, and I don't have music on. I don't need it. I don't have anything on. And I think that's what people are missing, that space to be and to contemplate and to have thoughts even. You know what I mean? It's like every day I take a walk. I actually made a new goal for myself this year to walk every day. I mean, I should just naturally do it because I don't mean just like walking around and doing stuff in the garden. I mean like taking a walk where there's nothing else I have to be doing. It's just, I'm just doing that, and people used to do that, just take a walk. And that was a normal thing to do. Like after dinner, I would go for a walk, and it's like not exciting enough anymore, or something. It's just, again, we're so overstimulated, and we expect that, and so addicted that we can't just take a walk, and we can't not have something with us or something on. And the benefit of that has been, honestly, my books have come out of that in a way. Like I take walks in the woods, and that's where I get the ideas, and I kind of get inspiration. And I'm not trying to think about it. It just like comes because the space is there, and it helps a lot. And I wouldn't even have time to write books, my old lifestyle. I mean, I'm not, and it's amazing because I can write books and do all these other things too. And people are like, how do you do all that? It's because I'm like, well, I'm not tethered to tech.
Yeah.
And I don't have some like crazy office. I mean, this is my work. I take other, I've had seasonal jobs with kayak guiding in the river and things. And we take a lot of odd jobs, and we do caretaking work on the property we're at. So we have like that job. So I don't have like a 9 to 5, or well, actually today there's no 9 to 5, right? It's like 12 to 12. I don't know what it is. It's whatever. It's like craziness. It's just anytime. And you have to be on call all the time, But people are so used to it that they feel really panicky. I've noticed, because I've had visitors occasionally, and not just this location, our old location. It's hard to get to where we've lived. And people get panicky when they're first away from things. They're used to the chatter, they're used to the distractions, and they've never, almost maybe never had that time to just be and face them. It's scary because you end up facing yourself a little bit, and but I just didn't, and I'm used to it, but I do see how people respond. And especially now that they are used to being able to talk to family all the time or connect. And they're not even really like talking and connecting in any kind of profound way. It's just like checking in, texting, the constant texting to check in, and which is so much pressure on any relationship. It's not healthy at all. People feel burdened by it, but they also feel obligated, or they feel like not wanted. There's just all these insecurities now that this has created that are just absolutely crazy. When you step back and look at it, which I've been able to do a lot, it's gone, it's like just, totally bonkers.
It's amazing how much it changes the dynamic of just natural human relation, for sure. But also a lot of the things that you said, and I know you do kind of highlight this a bit in the book, is the impact that this has on child development. We see so many learning disabilities, such an increase in ADHD diagnoses, autism. How much of that is just that if they are so used to constant, interaction, constant instant gratification, constant feedback all day, and it's taken away for them for 30 minutes to sit in class, how much of that is just the natural withdrawal of a true addiction rather than autism or a learning disability?
Oh, a lot. Like probably most of it. It's amazing. And I actually learned a lot about that from another author with the same last name, not related, that I know of, Chris Rowan, who wrote Virtual Child. And because she's like a clinical therapist for kids with like motor skill issues, like motor disorders, developmental disorders. And she saw a huge explosion in her, and not just her, like all the other therapists she knew in their clinics, like guess when, after the smartphone, after the iPad, just like, wow, inundated. And they're all getting the labels, they go through the labeling and drugging, and all they do, no. And she said, none of their doctors were asking about tech use. Incredible.
Mhm.
So she's the one seeing it and going, like, what about your screen use? Like, what about these kids? Like, and every case is like that she saw was just off the charts screen use all the time, and she said, well, let's try. So she came up with this like screen detox program, and, like really cutting back, not total elimination, but like cutting back. And then, having parents obviously involved and having them fill that space. I don't think kids want to be addicted. And she had a really good case of this one boy that just was such a touching story in a way, because it was so dysfunctional. Like he had he had all these labels thrown on him, ADHD, whatever, and like behavioral issues coming out of this, being violent to other kids at school, having to be put in a special. The interesting thing is that the way they dealt with it was putting him in another room with like a computer program. They just set him in front of a screen. That's his like special. That's the special ed now, right? And yeah, so more screens to combat the problem the screens are causing. It's like they just keep they throw drugs at it, they throw tech at it, and nobody's asking the right questions. And because they're very inconvenient and they're not profitable, and the answers. And so she had this boy like completely turned around. He was there because the parents like didn't want to drug him, so they came to her. So at least they kind of, stopped there with it. But that's what was like in store for him. Or maybe I don't remember if he was on any drugs yet or not, but like the Ritalin thing and everything, So, and he'd been expelled. He was like 7, or he'd been expelled like a few times, It was like crazy. And so, real problem child. And they admit it. They don't talk to him. Like they'll text in the same room with each other.
Oh, wow.
And so but that all changed when she kind of let them see the screen problem, because they admit it. Yeah, like he seems to want to be on the screens. He wants his games, and it would like kind of shut him up or seem to, pacify him to give him the games. Well, we all know what that creates in kids. I mean, come on, you give them what they want, the thing that they're addicted to, and you just keep giving it to them to make them quiet and make your life easier is going to just make it worse. So eventually, they actually cut back his screen use so much that he became happier. He started bike riding. He became verbal. He stopped being violent in school. He started getting better grades. He was making friends. Oh, wow. A revelation. He didn't need drugs. He wasn't ADD, ADHD at all. He was just screen addicted. And that's just so many kids. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, I can imagine.
And you automatically start thinking of, this is promoted and driven by big pharma and all the others that are profiting from this stuff. It's not a mistake. I mean, number one, they're compliant, they're docile, they're sitting there in a stupor. Then if they do act up, you put them on drugs. I think it's just all part of the master plan to make us all subjects, just walking around with our head down, doing exactly what we're told. Nobody's asking questions, which you were accused of asking too many, and I'm right along there with you. But I think this is what they are trying to get out of society. And if we can do that at a very young age, we have them for the rest of their life. And I don't think it's a mistake. Yeah.
No, it's not. And when you look at, I read a 300 something page lawsuit, against social media companies by parents whose kids like killed themselves because of social media, things like that. And, or were bullied, or, terrible things happening from it. And And yeah, they admit, Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, now they own all these different ones, admits that they target the youngest possible demographic, and because they say they want them to stay in their family. It's so creepy, right? The terms they use, the family of products through their whole lives. So start
Yeah.
them on Messenger Kids. They have something called Messenger Kids. Get them, and then into Messenger Kids, to Instagram, to Facebook, right? That's the like goal. So that they'll always be in the family. And they're always strategizing about how to do that, better. They want it more and more and more and more. And so like, this is what's really horrendous, is that like we have all these experts coming forward and saying, like psychiatrists and, saying like, this is like cocaine for the brain. This is like heroin and cocaine, the same effects on the brain. And you're giving this to kids. In fact, you are mandating it in schools. Like you're giving them iPads with Minecraft on it, which is a crazily addictive game. And when they're preschoolers, it's criminal. Like, what are you setting them up for? I mean, would you hand out crack cocaine in class to kids? I mean, what they do it. I mean, it's like, and I thought it's so incredible. I found out recently that in the state of California, it's a felony. It's a felony to smoke in a car with a minor, but you can give that minor all these gadgets you ever want, that are way worse than that, and that are also proven to be carcinogenic. So they have the same classification, and it's like you can just throw them an iPad at them, and that's fine. You can use your cell phone around them, that's fine, but you just can't smoke around them. Oh, great. I mean, this is how long things take, though. Eventually, maybe we'll get there with the bans on cell phones, and because of health reasons, because of the addiction, because of all this. But like, it took decades for the cigarette smoke thing to be, come to that point, with a lot of like people fighting for that, who lost people to it. And again, it's not tobacco. I mean, I love that they keep saying tobacco. It's still it's the chemicals in the cigarettes. There were like 300 something chemicals, and it was fake. It was like artificial nicotine, chemical nicotine. It wasn't even like they say tobacco has a nicotine. It's nothing compared to what they put in there. I mean, I was never bothered by people smoking real tobacco. I was always just bothered by cigarettes, so we still think of it as tobacco, which is, I think, another just kind of like way to manipulate us to, we're not looking at because then we're not thinking about chemicals, and that they're putting the same chemicals in everything else now,
Sure.
So yeah.
Well, I've got two more points I would really like to jump into before we let you go. And the first one directly leans into this conversation we were just having. It kind of flows again naturally. And we did touch on it for a moment earlier on. So obviously there's a lot of conversations. Again, this is all touched on in the book. You talk about the Man-Machine Project, government funded, obviously. You talk about MK Ultra. You talk about the woodpecker signal during the Cold War. And there's one line that I just pulled from it because all of these things kind of flow together, and it starts to make us ask the question, why do so many of these players have such a strong hand? Like DARPA, for example, why did they have such involvement with these technologies that we're talking about here? And the line from your book, Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt believes that 2.4 gigahertz frequencies emanating from Wi-Fi modems have been intentionally used for its specific neurological effects known to create docility in populations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so much of all of this, but especially when we're ingraining it when someone is so young and we're making it a necessity throughout their life, is going to lead to problems in the health aspect, right? Big pharma, we already discussed that. But creating docility, creating this lack of pushback from a society, where does that take us? And now we're looking at this massive onslaught of digital ID on a global scale. And how do all of these things intertwine to create this problem that we're in? And what do we even do other than maybe what you kind of touched on earlier, and living this off-grid lifestyle, kind of getting back to our roots a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to have to resist. You're going to have to decide what the line is you're not going to cross. That's what I think people aren't thinking about. We have to create the boundaries. We have to think about it. We have to think about where this is headed. because it just stop and like think about what we're doing for a second. Where it's headed, and where it's headed is like, these are openly stated goals by futurists, like all these, like, yeah, it's like what China's had already in place, like social credit systems, constant surveillance everywhere for your safety. I mean, first of all this extra surveillance has not made people safer, statistically speaking.
Amen.
In fact, it's been worse, right? And children are more susceptible to being, unfortunately, kidnapped and, God knows what done to them because of the internet. It's actually facilitated that. So they're not safer by being under surveillance, and nobody's safer under surveillance. And it affects the way we behave and how we treat each other. But yeah, by design, I do think so. Unfortunately, that's why you can call me a conspiracy theorist, or you can be a coincidence theorist. But yeah, I mean, what I've seen in my research is that this is a long time coming and planned in terms of like, if you just think about how like people who, it's hard for us to relate to because we're not psychopaths and we don't have like power lust. But if you were one and you have power lust and you want it to not only like have more power, but maintain your position of power and not, you would obviously keep doing whatever you can to keep that and to increase that. It doesn't really end. Like once you get into that sense of like wanting to be the most whatever, it doesn't really go away. So they're stuck in that. And we see like we have this, who's the wealthiest people in the world today are tech. They're in tech, right? So number one, and yeah, tech, pharmaceuticals, mostly tech. And they're wealthier than they've ever been. Like in my own lifetime, short lifetime, it's like we're talking about people, $500 billion worth. That's Musk right now. And I think there's other players that are more hidden that probably have more worth, like, than that don't want the light on them. But because that's, well, anyway, who we're told is the wealthiest is Elon Musk. And how much power does that give me? He already got a government position, for crying out loud, because of that. I mean, it's like they even just like put it in our face. Anyway, so I could talk about him for a while and get kind of pissed off when I do. But yeah, so I know. I call him like lone scum is his like anagram, Elon Musk. But yeah, lone scum. Anyway, yeah, I'm getting distracted. So you're asking, okay, so like I mentioned cybernetics and these early like mind control experiments. So again, the goal behind even inventing the internet was about controlling populations. So, and they were like looking at the best way to do that. And also like in changing our brains, and again, just behavior modification. These are like disciples of Pavlov, they were working together. Actually, cyberneticians were working with each other during the so-called Cold War. Russians or Soviets and the US were collaborating on what they call psychotronic weapons, which is affecting behavior and emotions in people. So like psychotronic weapons was about using electromagnetic fields specifically. They also experiment with drugs too, and that was part of the MK Ultra stuff, but specifically EMFs. And you mentioned, so woodpecker signal was part of that. And I have this whole timeline. I just started I don't have it in my book, but I was like putting together for another show earlier. But it's kind of lengthy and I probably can't get into it all now. But I kind of was making a timeline to highlight like this progression, so the very first experiments, the very first documented use of electricity, right away, they were trying on humans and animals to see like how it could control them, like chain reflexes, with frogs and then people. And then so stimulating, nerve endings to control. And then it became electrodes in the brain and to like affect behavior that way, including like your movements. And it's just become more sophisticated over time. So woodpecker signal is also called duga. Duga is a Russian it means arc. And that was like 1976, I think. And it was about, 10 years because it ended in 86 with the Chernobyl accident thing, like distraction, I think actually scapegoat possibly for all the birth defects and everything that happened from that 10-year period of those citizens, being exposed to this massive antenna that had this 10 hertz signal. And using I forget how many megabytes or whatever power megawatts I want to say, and it traveled like it could be felt in North America. It was pointed at North America, And the effects were felt by like huge populations, increases in all these symptoms like insomnia and even hallucinations and depression, and then eventually cancers, and the locals, closer would you felt it more. So it was a really powerful antenna system. They did it for 10 years. It was part of this, just this experiment, right? And also concurrent with that was overlapping rather, was the Moscow signal aimed at the covert microwave frequencies, pulsed frequencies. We use like pulsed microwave frequencies in our communications. That was what was used in the U.S. Embassy in Moscow on the personnel covertly. And with the approval of the U.S. government, once we got wind of it, because as long as they shared their findings with us, that was cool, right? Kissinger thought great. And Kissinger, at the end of that, said it was definitely tied to like all kinds of things, including cancer. They had a death even from leukemia after that. So like, oh, great, we learned about this covert weapon, what it can do, how wonderful. And then and then, so the thing about woodpecker signal, the reason they called it that is you could hear it on a shortwave radio anywhere in the world, and it sounded like a tapping, like a woodpecker. And that was the 10 hertz. So that ended in 86, but then not that long after, I mean, if you think about, I don't know exactly what year the Wi-Fi came into being, but Wi-Fi uses 10 hertz as well. The power is less, but it's everywhere. And so that woodpecker signal is there. And what's so interesting about that, it's completely unnecessary. It's like it's a lower frequency, which travels farther. The high frequency that's used for communication, that 2.4 gigahertz that you mentioned, gigahertz, right, is like embedded in the carrier wave of the 10 hertz that they don't actually need. And the thing about that is when you're not using it, the 10 hertz is always tapping. And it's like, it's like pecking. I feel like it's pecking at your brain.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. And it's like, why is it, this is the question, why is it there if it's unnecessary?
Yeah.
It's completely unnecessary. Why? And we already know from Duga and woodpecker, from the Ukraine, what that did to people. So again, just another thing to keep us not feeling well, at our our lowest, just something that we have to another attack. And but yeah, MK Ultra experimented with remote controlling with radio frequencies, and that was all in there, and that came out. People still, I don't know, it's like people think that's a conspiracy. It's a real project that was, declassified.
Right.
But yeah, it was real. And the reason it came out and there was a big stink about it is because they were doing it on citizens who had no idea. They didn't consent. They were using mostly prisoners, psych ward patients, but also like sometimes university students or soldiers for their experiments without telling them. I think in one case they pumped in like LSD through the vents at a party, like on campus somewhere. And like there were cases of, I've read this book, Operation Mind Control, is really fascinating. I'd recommend, of like, I forget who, but it was a kind of prominent person. So that the family, was pretty angry at this, but they were experimenting on him with drugs without him knowing. And it ended up with him jumping out a window because he was like, tripping out so bad with LSD or something, and didn't know. And they first ruled it a suicide, eventually like apologized to the family.
Of course.
Yeah, actually we were experimenting on him. But that's just like, we have this history of our government experimenting on us, and yet we somehow think that doesn't happen now. How naive are we that like we think this just, it ended because we revealed those projects. And what happened to the CIA anyway when the church Senate hearings happened and they said, bad. And they're like, okay, we won't do it again. We promise. Here's a little, okay, we promise. And like nothing happened. They closed that one. And then I'm sure they have another one. They start under another name, another covert
absolutely.
project.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not going to end.
I think that goes right back to the comments we were making a little bit ago about, the people's dependency on government. Therefore, they have a much less likelihood of questioning anything that they would do because they're all dependent on it. I mean, they put us in this box, and so many people have complied willingly. And Bree, I know I think you had another question too, right?
Well, I did, but I was actually going to say that, Shannon, I know we've kept you for so much longer than we originally intended, but I love this conversation. I think it's so interesting. I think it's so important. I was actually going to suggest perhaps we could plan another time to chat with you, rather than keep you for, another
Sure.
2 hours.
Oh yeah,
with
I
all
know.
of our questions.
I mean, this kind of stuff, yeah. And I do, like know a lot about all these different topics because I just am I live out here in the woods and gotta, entertain myself somehow. So
sounds like a great place to be.
Yeah.
Well, we certainly appreciate your expertise on the subject matter because I really don't think enough people are talking about this. I mean, this is a very rare subject to hear people speak on and write books on. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Dad, do you have any last questions before we let her kind of close out with where we can find her and all that good stuff?
If I could just indulge you for a moment, if somebody was suspicious that maybe they're affected, what are a couple of the key markers? What are a couple of the most prevalent symptoms that a person would experience?
I'd say headaches for sure, like headache, different, especially the degree of them getting worse. And like this kind of confusion, brain fog, that people seem to get, and insomnia. Those would be, like insomnia and headaches. You probably, it's your environment. If it's just unexplained and, start coming on. And again, this is the kind of thing you can test. I mean, I know it's harder and harder, but you can test it by just doing simple things like at least turning stuff off at night, like definitely your Wi-Fi, definitely your cell phone, definitely don't sit next to these routers. I mean, ideally you would hardwire them. It's harder to do it, but you can. There's always a way still, but you have to kind of get in touch with the provider and get them to get you in there to turn off this crap. And then, because it's not enough to just plug in with an Ethernet cable. You have to disable the function in there, and and then remember to do it on your computer too, because you could have the Wi-Fi blasting you in your computer while you're hardwired, and that's not really solving that problem. So if you don't kind of know to do those things, you might say, "Oh, I tried it," and give it more time, give it a little bit of time. I think just in terms of addressing that and tech addiction, what I recommend people start with is something another author, suggested. And I think to even start with this, but to add to it is taking an hour off per day and a day off per week. And then a week off per year, ideally, but not everybody can get a week off per year, but at least an hour a day. If you can't get away from your tech for an hour a day, there's a real problem there. And if a day per week is more helpful, because then you really have a full day where you get to see how you feel. And if you can also go outside in nature somewhere for the day or a lot of the day, that would be helpful. But at least, and get if you're in your home and it's crappy weather, whatever, just turn the stuff off. Turn it off at night, for God's sake, for one thing. Just start with that. Turn it off at night. Do not sleep with your cell phone. Yep. Don't let your cell phone sleep with you or your Wi-Fi router. It's not your friend or your partner. If you have to use the other functions on it, you can turn on airplane mode. Actually, you should have it on airplane mode anytime you're not using it if you still have a cell phone. Hope people will start just getting rid of them, but that's a lot to ask for right now, I realize. So with our dependency, but if people start to treat it more like a phone instead of my phone and my life and my everything on it, and also, put it in more of its tool designation, start to see that relationship and change it. The airplane mode's great because you can disable that and all these wireless functions and still use your alarm clock or take pictures or something, so that's a good start. I have lots of suggestions in my books about this stuff as well. So if you get my books, which please do, and support me, because it's not it's mostly charity work here, but I'd love to get a little support to keep myself going. So it's Wifi-refugee.com. to get to my books. And you could get a signed copy from me if you're in the US. You can contact me on my website. I put everything there because I'm trying to like spend as little time as I can online, and also encourage other people to spend as little time as they can. So it's like a one-stop shop kind of place for my podcast and blog. I'm not on social media. I went off of that years ago, and I just refuse to go back on. Again, like making boundaries for yourself around this stuff, deciding where, like I've decided I'm not going to use AI and engage with that evil thing. So I'm like, don't use AI. I mean, eventually these kind of things might not be an option anymore. Again, like realizing that the goal is that they're not an option. The goal is that everything's going to be biometrics and scanning your retinas or whatever crazy thing. And like, are you willing to just say yes because you got to get online? I mean, it's sad. I mean, we have to have some other options. It should not be mandatory to even use the internet. We should be able to live a life without it. We should be able to definitely engage in commerce and business without it and not have it forced on us.
For sure.
So, they're tracking devices, surveillance devices as well, and we should be allowed to not have that. But yeah, so fight back, resist any way you can. Little things matter. So
that's perfect. I love it. Well, this has just been such a great conversation. We really, really enjoyed it. And we can't thank you enough for your time. We usually close out with the Bible verse. If you would like to stay on for us for that, Pops will lead us there.
All right.
Okay. For the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. And that's 1 Corinthians 1:25. Shannon, it's been our pleasure to have you on tonight. I hope we have an opportunity to bring you back. There's so much more I think we can dig into.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to.
Perfect. Right, so we will put your website in the show notes for everyone to find you, and make sure to plug those books, because I can tell you from my experience, there is so much incredible information in there. I've already shared it with a few people as far as where to find it, and recommended highly. So everybody go check out wifirefugee.com. Thank you so much, Shannon.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night. Alrighty, everybody. So I know that was a bit of a longer episode. It's been a while since we had one that long, but I could have kept on talking to Shannon. I thought that was an amazing conversation. So enlightening, so important. We all need to be talking about this. This is something that does directly impact all of us in our own homes, in our day-to-day lives every single day, whether we are feeling the effects of that or not. My guess is that you have felt some of these effects and you did not know what to attribute it to. And for that, I am sorry, but I do hope this podcast tonight shed some light on some issues that maybe you've had in your own life. We have some exciting news to that point. We have our 100th episode coming up, and we are going to be doing a giveaway on social media. So on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, we will be doing a giveaway where, kind of the classic rules. You like the post, you just have to be following us, you tag one person, and you get a point. There's a couple opportunities to get some additional points. That being said, we are giving away a couple books, a t-shirt, some stickers, some good fourth box merch. We have a pocket constitution, or rather the Citizens Rulebook, to give away. All these good things in one nice little bundle. And we decided we're going to go ahead and include Shannon Rowan's most recent book, The Red Shoes, because it absolutely needs to be read, and I would love to gift that to somebody. So all of that being said, please be on the lookout for these posts on social media. Please check out Shannon's website at Wifi-refugee.com. That's Wifi-refugee.com. All of her books are available there, including the ones that we spoke about this evening. And last point, for the 100th episode, we're also going to be answering listener questions. So please head over to any of the socials or to our website at www.thefourthbox.com to submit any questions in our chat or through our email. And we will just do user questions for our 100th episode and then announce who that giveaway winner is. So thank you so much for listening. As always, until next week, stay vigilant. Thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate the support and truly love getting to share this message with anyone who wants or needs it. The best way for you to support the show is to subscribe, add a rating, and share with everyone you know. You can find us on Instagram, X, and at thefourthbox.com. We'll see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Stay vigilant.